What's good, YouTube? Today in this video, I'm going to be going over some more important information regarding what I talked about in my last video about, the current virus narratives that are being pushed right now and everything that they're talking about and that they're claiming is happening, right? And we're going to be talking about today in this video how countries are stepping up their surveillance measures in response to the World Health Organization's recent declaration of the Mpox being a global health emergency. So I'm going to just get right into it right now. I'm going to play the video, and then right after I'm going to read over this article explaining in further detail how countries like China are starting to monitor people and checking people for the Mpox and things like that. All right. So, yeah, I'm going to get right into it.
Tell us more about wider containment efforts and the risk of border closures.
So both the Africa CDC and the WHO have been very, very clear. They do not think that borders should be closed. We saw with COVID-19.
They do not think that the borders should be closed. I wonder why. Yeah, I think I know why.
That it's not a particularly effective measure. Once something is moved, it's moved, and closing something retrospectively is not particularly useful. There's also a huge risk of economic.
Oh, yeah, it's not useful to prevent millions of people from coming into a country. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Fallout, and specifically in a region.
The reality is this is all BS, guys. Like, you guys already know my point of view on this entire subject matter. This is complete and utter nonsense. Like, none of this BS that they talk about makes sense whatsoever.
Like the DRC and other parts of Africa, that is something that no one can afford. So that is not something that is recommended. Of course, it doesn't mean that no one will do it. We got news from China this morning that they are surveilling all incoming transport from Africa, so flights or boats. Nigeria, just on the continent, Nigeria has said they're also upping their surveillance. And
so Nigeria on top of China as well. But we're going to get into specifically China and what they're starting to do in response to the WHO's declaration later on in the video. So stay tuned.
So last month, Ivory Coast actually reported their first case of this particular variant. And I'm just going to read to you what they're doing because it sounds quite dramatic. So they have invited anyone keeping live animals without proper authorization to hand them over to the nearest forest service station or risk facing up to 20 years imprisonment. And
20 years imprisonment.
A fine that equates to about 100.
These people are absolute tyrants. Like, they'll do anything to get their way.
$66,000. So countries are taking it seriously.
But Janice, I mean, and again, a lot of people will be, afraid. A lot of other people will say, we're making mountains out of nothing. The concern here is that this is a changing virus, right? So that it's not airborne, but you could still catch it if there's a bit of saliva if you're speaking to someone quite close. So, how fast can this new strain spread, and how many versions are we likely to get of this?
We don't have that data right now, and scientists are really scrambling to get more. Surveillance in the most affected area, which is Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, is not. It's a very tricky area to work in, and so it's been circulating there. This particular variant's been circulating there for at least 8 months, possibly longer, and the cases are very high there. Both and deaths actually, more than 500 deaths in the DRC alone this year. So they are scrambling to get that information. It is still something that we will probably get more information in the coming days and weeks.
Check this out, guys. It says China steps up checks for Mpox as Asia goes on high alert after WHO's warning. Goes on to say countries across Asia are stepping up checks for Mpox, with China announcing that it will begin screening travelers for symptoms of the virus after the WHO declared a global health emergency. Sounds very familiar to what was happening in 2020, right? It sure does. Goes on to say in Singapore, countries across Europe, or I'm sorry, across Asia are now on high alert for mpox, with China announcing that it will begin stepping up checks for the highly contagious. At least that's what they're claiming, of course. Disease after the WHO declared a global health emergency, previously known as, I'm not going to say the whole word, but mpox, the so-called highly infectious disease, can spread quickly through close contact. Symptoms include fever, headaches, muscular aches, and large boil-like skin lesions. In an announcement on Friday, God, this stupid thing keeps getting in the way of the words. An announcement on Friday, Chinese customs officials said all overseas arrivals would be screened for symptoms of the virus over the next 6 months. This will also apply to all aircraft and vessels, as well as containers and goods arriving from mpox affected places, officials said. This is where it gets more interesting. China in 2022 classified mpox as a Class B infectious disease, allowing officials to take emergency measures such as restricting gatherings, suspending work and school, or sealing off areas when there is an outbreak of a disease. This is the same exact thing that they were doing in 2020. Those who have been in contact with mpox cases or display symptoms should take the initiative to declare themselves to customs. Read a statement by the General Administration of Customs. This week, the WHO declared mpox a global health emergency for a second time in 2 years, following an initial outbreak in the Democratic Republic of Congo, which has since spread to neighboring parts of Central and East Africa. Also, Canada recently issued a warning about preparing for a new thing that's going to be far worse than what we saw in 2020. But I'm not going to get into that in this video because it would just make the video way too long. So I'm probably just going to make a separate video on that. It goes on to say Hong Kong, which recorded 13 cases this year, said it would continue to closely monitor the situation and enhance preventative measures following WHO's announcement. So all these countries, you guys are seeing this in real time. All these countries are ramping up surveillance measures. All these countries are starting to test people for this thing, right? That they're claiming is starting to spread rapidly. Goes on to say members of the public are urged to heighten vigilance and avoid close physical contact with persons suspected of contracting it. Officials said in a press release on Thursday, adding that high-risk groups have been advised to receive you-know-whats, said the government in a press release. Hong Kong's Department of Health has also told doctors and hospitals to report suspected cases for prompt epidemiological investigation and contact tracing. Contact tracing. Another thing that they were doing in 2020. As well as issue travel health advice to travelers visiting Africa. Let me remind you guys that the whole situation in 2020, they claimed that it started in China, right? And then all of a sudden, they started saying that it's all over the world, right? We're seeing the same patterns here. We're seeing the same exact patterns happening with this narrative that they're pushing right now. Japan's foreign ministry issued a level 1 health alert on Thursday, urging citizens traveling to or staying in 7 African countries to exercise caution. Southeast Asia on alert, according to figures released by the WHO. Close to 100,000 confirmed cases have been reported since 2022, along with 208 deaths reported. In 2022, caseloads across Asia were reported in countries like India, Japan, and Singapore. Singapore's Ministry of Health on Thursday said the immediate public health risk of the outbreak in the country remains low, added that precautionary measures are in place. While there is a cross-border spread of potentially more severe, you know what, in parts of Central and East Africa, the outbreak has thus far remained within the African continent, and no reported cases outside of the African continent. Basically, that's what they're saying. To date, all the infections detected in Singapore have been the milder. This is all nonsense, guys. Like, you guys already know this, but I think I'm gonna leave it off there. You guys get the point. Surveillance measures are being ramped up as we speak. More and more of these psyops are going to continue happening, and you can expect that to keep ramping up as time goes on, because that's what's going to happen. You know, we're going to see a lot more psyops. We're going to see a lot more deceptions. We're going to see a lot more scare tactics, of course. You know, it's like a never-ending cycle. Like, these people do not take a break from this nonsense. These people are working 24/7, day in and day out, to keep promoting fear, lies, manipulation, and all kinds of BS. It's ridiculous. And the fact that 99% of people are still clueless to it is pathetic. You know? But we live in a clown world after all, so yeah, I mean, I'm going to leave it off there, but I thank you guys for watching this video. If you watch it this far, please make sure to share this video as far and wide as you possibly can. Get it out to as many people as you can, because more people need to hear the truth. More people need to hear the message. Prepare for what's to come. Prepare for the unexpected, because best believe the next big event that's going to take place, I can't tell you when it's going to happen. I can't even tell you if this is actually really going to be the next scam that they really use as an excuse to shut down the whole world again. And I'm not claiming that this is guaranteed to be it, but we do know for a fact that they're planning another one that's going to be a lot more tyrannical. Just like Bill Gates said, you know, the next one, it will get attention this time, you know, and then he smirks and giggles about it, right? You guys know how these people operate.